Now, Sports Talk with Broads. Here's Hunter Brody.
Some losses hurt me inside way more than others, and this is one of those losses. This was a winnable basketball game by the Sixers. I thought they hurt themselves. There were key people in this game that made crucial mistakes which hurt the squad, and that's what bothers me. It was self-inflicted. There were horrendous decisions made from players and from the coach that lost the game. That can't happen. It just cannot happen. Before we dive more into this, do not forget about the promo code BROADS. If you use the promo code BROADS at SeatGeek's checkout page when purchasing tickets, you will receive $20 off. It's a no-brainer. Use it now. So, we'll start with Brett Brown because that is the hottest discussion after this game. I've been on the record being a supporter of Brett Brown, understanding that he has flaws in his game. I never claimed in my life that he had zero flaws. But I'm not a fire him right now this instant guy. And I'm still not. But I can criticize the performance that he had in Oklahoma City, and it was a garbage one. He didn't use the timeout at the end of regulation, which forced Joel Embiid to take a shot, and it was an awful shot, and I will get into that from Joel Embiid's perspective later on. So Brett Brown did not call a timeout late in regulation with a tie basketball game to draw up a play to win it, where he has had success drawing up plays. His rotations were brutal. Furkan Korkmaz rocking 26 minutes, and in overtime, once Tobias Harris fouls out, he puts Furkan back into the game when he was 1 for 7 from the field. Now listen, when Tobias Harris fouled out, it was what, a 1-point game? With the blink of your eye, Furkan Korkmaz got abused defensively, and it was a 10-point game, just like that. How in the world does that happen? How does Matisse Thybulle not be the guy to go in? You can throw out there because of spacing. Spacing is such a big problem, but you got to lock down in overtime. There are moments for Furkan Korkmaz when it's the last possession out of a timeout on the offensive side of the floor, like in Portland, absolutely, he can be on the floor to space the floor and shoot a three. But when he's got to rock 3 minutes in overtime, 2 minutes in overtime, you got to put someone else out there. It would be different if Furkan Korkmaz was 5 of 7 from 3 and he was having a great tear. But he was the exact opposite. The exact opposite. So Brett Brown made some bad decisions. But I'm also a big-time believer in players have to play. And Ben Simmons, in 46 minutes, had 8 field goal attempts. I'm not going to say shots. I'm going to say field goal attempts because none of them are actually shots. Are you serious? He had 2 at the half. He did not take a field goal attempt from the 8:34 mark on in the fourth quarter. I mean, this is your go-to guy, right? This is one of your go-to guys. This is one of your all-stars. That can't happen. It's so unacceptable. Don't give me a stat line. Don't give me he's close to a triple-double. I'm also a Ben Simmons supporter. I'm not one of those guys screaming, trade him right now. But when criticism can be talked about, I will talk about it. These are the type of games that piss me off from Ben Simmons. You can't play 46 minutes and think it's okay to have 8 field goal attempts. Mind-blowing. You know, the bench as a whole only had 11 points. Matisse got robbed at times because if Furkan Korkmaz isn't going to give you anything offensively, he cannot play more minutes. I know Matisse can't stretch out the offense at all because he has no offense to his game, but Furkan wasn't giving you anything. He wasn't giving you offense, and he definitely wasn't giving you defense, so you might as well in that moment give someone a chance who can at least provide a great spark defensively. John Johnson of WIP and covers the Sixers said something on Twitter after the game that I thought was a really good take, just a solid take. So when Embiid and Ben are your go-to guys, right, you're going to have to micromanage things. Late in the game, late in regulation, the Sixers are tied and they have a chance to win, and Brett Brown elects to go with the style of figure it out. And it ends up being Joel Embiid with Steven Adams, and Embiid just pops a jumper. Now, there wasn't that much time on the clock, but here's the thing. Embiid, in that moment, and Embiid did not have a bad night, but there was a moment where he needed to be a game-changing difference maker, and he lacked IQ in that moment. You have to take Adams to the rim. You have to take him. You have to take him. You cannot take a jump shot in that situation. It was a bad jump shot, may I add. It wasn't even close. It was a tough look. It was bad. In that moment, just take it to the rack and force him to foul you. You're too big. You're too dominant. In those minutes, in those seconds, I'm sorry, not minutes, in those seconds, the last seconds of the game, put your shoulder down, force him to foul you, and take it to the rim. 6 free throws total at the half. Now, they finished with 22, but guess what? They only hit 15 of those, which is 68.2%. So free throws are continuing to be an issue. Not getting to the free throw line is becoming an issue, and that's the way teams are playing the Sixers right now because they are such a bad team shooting. But I don't think they shot horrific from 3. Now, they only scored, 107 points, and that's kind of what they're averaging right now. But it wasn't like they were missing all of these wide open looks like the last few games. Tobias Harris actually had a good bounce back game. I loved Tobias's game in this one. Sadly, he fouled out in overtime, and I thought some of those calls on him were absolutely horrendous. But Tobias ended up having 21 points, knocked down a couple threes. This is what you need out of Tobias, a 20-plus point performance and knocking down around 3-4 three-pointers. Josh Richardson was electric. He was making shots. He was being a dog. He finished with 28 points, and he was a leader of the crew. And I thought Brett at times late took him off the court where he did not need to be taken off the court. Sixers late third made a 9-0 run. They made a push. They took the lead. And then once again, another really bad fourth quarter. I can't give Brett Brown a free pass on this one. This was arguably his worst game this season. With the rotations, not calling timeout, Furkan late. I thought Brett Brown was atrocious in this one, and I can't defend him. One thing that's eating me alive is this team is supposed to be fantastic and shut down defensively. Let's take a look at Oklahoma City and what they did from the field. 53.9% from the field. 41.7% from 3. Huh. And it wasn't like they were turning the ball over, and I'm talking about the Thunder. It wasn't like the Thunder, they were so overwhelmed with the Sixers' length and how great they are defensively that they were turning the ball over at this elite clip. No, they weren't. So the Sixers were not even being the beasts and the dogs that they were supposed to be defensively to start the season. So we're struggling to score, and we're not being defensive-minded, tough guys to play against. So what are we? There's no identity with this Sixers team right now. And I just want to repeat myself. As much as I criticized Brett Brown tonight, which deservingly so, he needs to be criticized after a performance like this. When Ben Simmons plays 46 minutes, and gives you 8 field goal attempts and will not look at the basket for 1 second, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. And the answer is he needs to figure it out. Like the team, the organization, they need to figure this out with the kid. The answer is not trade him. The answer is get it out of him somehow. I mean, I know that Brett Brown doesn't have to force Ben to shoot, sit him until he shoots. That mindset's ridiculous. But they got to find a way. I mean, organizationally, they have to sit this kid down. Every single member of the front office sit this kid down. Like, Ben, you got to do something. I don't know. But he's too good. Like, we've seen him dominate. We've seen him be the best player on the floor, be aggressive. But here's the thing. Everyone has seen tape now. Everyone has seen film. He's been in the league for a couple years. They know what to do. Pack the paint on him, and he will not look for 1 second. It has to change. I think it's funny that, a lot of these people who want Ben Simmons out of town just thinks that all of these teams are willing to give up Booker for him and all of these players. Trae Young. Oh, trade him for Trae Young. Trade him for this guy. What makes you think, right? If the Sixers are willing to give up on Ben Simmons, what does that tell all of these other organizations? Oh, there must be something truly wrong because this kid's supposed to be an all-star or superstar. Those teams are not giving up Trae Young's, Booker's. You're going to be getting crap for Ben Simmons to the point where it's not even worth it. Ben Simmons' ceiling is too high for me. It just is. It's too high. The answer, the fix, is he needs to address the issue. He has to. Or this will continue to be his career. It's extremely frustrating. We had to watch CP3 drop 27. Gallinari dropped 28, and he was productive late in the ballgame. Ferguson knocking down threes left and right. And that comes down to the defense not being as aggressive as we expected it to be from the jump. How about this? This one was so interesting to me when I saw the stat line. Points in the paint. There's no denying the size was in favor of the Sixers in this basketball game. Somehow they had more points in the paint than we did. They were abusing the paint more than we were. That doesn't make any sense. Now, with the whole Joel Embiid thing, taking 8 threes, I know that will be a discussion. He made 50% of them. If he makes 50% of his threes, I don't know what to tell you. You can't complain about it if he's making them. And he actually had a late three that was clutch. But it comes down to that one moment that really irked me. And it was the fact that, he did not take Adams hard to the rim. But if Brett Brown called timeout, maybe it changes everything. And Brett Brown actually is solid at drawing up plays out of timeouts. That's where it doesn't make sense to me. He drew up a really beautiful play in Portland. Furkan Korkmaz hit it. Against the Cleveland Cavaliers at home, that high-low play to Joel Embiid. I mean, that thing was beautiful. And the squad executed it. Like, why in that moment are we just going to allow Embiid to take this deep 2-point jumper? It's annoying. Al Horford, I mentioned at the top, he struggled. He struggled. I expected a little bit more out of him production-wise offensively. And it's been a discussion with this squad when Joel Embiid is on the floor. Normally, this is the really the first time in a while that Tobias Harris got going as a whole anyway, but that's been a discussion. Can Tobias Harris have a good game with Joel Embiid on the floor? Well, I think he did that. But Al Horford is struggling playing with Embiid right now, and he really hasn't been able to get going when Embiid has been on the floor. His great games where we were stunned to see how lethal he was as an old man, Embiid wasn't playing. He was sitting for the suspension and whatnot. Embiid's stat line was 31 and 12. So it almost seems laughable to put him on the blame, but that last possession, I'm going to lose sleep over it. There are so many people to blame, right? I mean, it starts with the top, Brett Brown, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. Do I get mad at Furkan Korkmaz, or do I say, well, reality is he's not good. especially defensively. So is it his fault that he's not good? Or is it the coach's fault for putting him in there late? Now, that one's a toss-up. But for me, when you look at this, when you want to start screaming to fire Brett Brown and you throw out names, which I always love this one, right? The Warriors fired Mark Jackson, brought in Steve Kerr, they won championships. They fired Mark Jackson because he wasn't getting the job done. That's the example everyone uses. Yet one of the names that everyone always wants to replace Brett Brown with is Mark Jackson, the guy they use as the example that wasn't good enough. And really, I'm not telling you Brett Brown's the guy because he hasn't really been great all around so far this season. He hasn't been. But I just find it comical, as if Brett Brown leaving is going to fix everything. That's where I think the flaw is with this fan base that wants him fired. Brett Brown being gone, is that going to change 8 field goal shots or 8 field goal attempts from Ben Simmons in 46 minutes? I mean, so this one irks me. This one does. There are some losses that don't bother me so much, but I sat on the couch and it really irritated me. It bothered me. I felt disgust in my stomach, and I was fueling with fire. I really was. It was crushing me inside during that late overtime period. But what are you going to do? 7-5 now. 7-5, and they go to Cleveland next to play on Sunday. A squad that just played the Sixers super tough in Philadelphia, where the Sixers squeaked one out really ugly and really hideous. See, what gets me going about Ben is, and I'm so intrigued by this, it's so hard to comprehend his mindset, but does he walk out of the building today satisfied? And I'm not talking about with the loss, because obviously he is mad about the loss. Anyone in the Sixers locker room is going to be mad about the loss. But his play, his personal play, how does he feel about it? He sees the stat line, not an ugly stat line. Some rebounds, some assists. You're in the teens in points. 16? 6 of 8 shooting. I guess you can say that's efficient. Is he satisfied with that? He doesn't even look at the basket. He doesn't even look. One of the most frustrating athletes I've ever seen in this city, because the ceiling is there. The athleticism is there. And I've watched him go off and score 28 with 15 assists and 12 rebounds. I've seen it. It's crazy. It really is. So we'll see how this team bounces back. But to have that third quarter push and to let it all slip away with another horrendous fourth quarter, it's brutal. And back to Ben Simmons real quick. There was a play, actually. It was at the end of the half. The Sixers had the lead. And for some reason, with the clock ticking down, he has a reach-in foul. He tries to grab cookies, and it puts the Thunder on the line. Like, is he thinking? Is he using his brain? How can you make that decision there to try and put your hand in the mix? It blows my mind. It can totally change the outcome of the game, too, to give them points at the end of the half. Now they're feeling a little bit more confident coming out of halftime. That's a terrible decision. All right, so I want to know what you think is the biggest problem after this game. I know Brett Brown is going to be all over the place in terms of criticism, and he's the issue, and he's the problem, and I can't defend it right now because after that performance by him, it was atrocious, and he did nothing right. Really, he did nothing right in this ballgame. But my theory is you get a new head coach in here. If Ben's giving you this, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He has to be a difference maker. He has to be better. The bench needs to be better. The bench was a big-time difference maker for this squad earlier in the season. 11 points total. You know, Mike Scott needs to provide more for us offensively. James Ennis a little bit more offensively. They weren't good enough. Thank you guys so much for listening. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and I will see you next time.